time. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to a new week with Celebrating Great CX series. This week we have Ecesu Erol from Unless with us, who is going to host this week's session on better digital experiences in a customer-centric world. Before I hand over, I will quickly introduce myself. My name is Barbara van der Linde. I am part of Mate4, a customer experience learning organization. So what better way to invite awesome brands and people to showcase what they are up to in making the CX industry an even better place. So before we're going to kick off, just a couple of quick housekeeping, so to say. So we will kindly ask you to mute yourself as we're going through the talk. If you have any questions, we will be happy to discuss all of them at the end of the presentation. If you would like to join us in doing your putting your camera on, then we are always pleased with that. Always nice to see some friendly faces. And for the rest, if anything, we would love to have some questions at the end. So don't be shy and just put some in the chat. So whenever you're ready, Ecesu, I'm going to start my share my screen, and then you can roll.
Okay, well, time is of the essence, so I'll already start. Thank you all for joining us today on this talk about better digital experiences in a customer-centric world. My name is Ecesu. I'm originally from Istanbul, but I've been living in the Netherlands for about 8 years at this point, doing a mix of things. I have been a co-organizer for Ladies.UX Amsterdam, and I wanted to mention that specifically because if you're interested in UX, they are a great community, part of a global nonprofit organization, but then one of the local chapters. Pre-pandemic, they used to do meetups, but now they also have a mentorship program and a Slack channel. So I recommend you check them out. Then we can also talk a little bit about what I do at Unless in the second slide. So my official title is CXO, which is a little bit of a strange title and not very common yet, but Chief Experience Officer. I like to think that it has a double meaning. So it's about the experience of our customers, yes, but because we are a digital experience platform, I like to think that it's also about the experience of our customers' customers. And at Unless, I'm involved in marketing, support, onboarding, and account management. Now that's a lot of things, but that has allowed me a special seat where I get to interact with customers from when they are leads and they're interested in Unless to when they become customers, when they're getting onboarded, and once they become active, engaged users. So that also means in internal meetings, I get to be the voice of the customer because I know what they want, where they get stuck, what else they would like to do. And so that's why I am here talking to you all today. So a little bit about Unless. In the next slide, please. Our mission is to help digital teams launch better customer experiences faster. But what does that mean? Well, we are a SaaS company with a platform that helps teams collaboratively create experiences on their websites, deploy their ideas, and validate with the help of tests to, well, have better experiences online without having to write any code either. So let's take a look at some of our features. Initially, we started in personalization very specifically. And by the way, I'm telling you all this because later I'll be giving some examples of our experiences, and for them to make sense, I need to do this. But we started in personalization, and over time, our customers started asking about testing capability. So we added some experimentation, A/B testing, control groups, the whole shebang. And also, of course, over time, we were adding more integrations because oftentimes what we see is companies use a variety of tools. They have a little bit of data in all these different places, and it's very scattered, stuck in these silos, and we need to make that data actionable with the help of integrations. Now, the last part, feature management, that has been a bit of an interesting journey. And that's because we were adding components to our product. So things like bars and pop-ups that you can quickly add to your website, but also additional blocks that you can insert into existing pages. Now, this is something that came in very handy when COVID hit, and all of a sudden, all these businesses had to adjust their websites, communicate latest information to their customers. And they started using us more as a feature management solution than personalization or testing. And it also meant that they didn't have to go to their developers, wait for the prioritization and their time on the roadmap. They could quickly put things into practice with Unless. If it worked, then it could go to the developers in a prioritized manner. So moving on, I would like to talk briefly about some trends that are currently happening, especially since COVID. And the first one of those being the move to digital. So of course, the move to digital was something that was already taking place. It was happening, but COVID has seriously accelerated the pace at which this happened. A lot of retail and brick and mortar stores as well, with all the lockdowns and shops getting closed, they had to adjust quickly, or otherwise they disappeared as well. We've seen a lot of headlines about this. So really, if you are digital, you are winning. So in the next slide, we will also see that there has been a move from focusing on acquisition to retention. And here I have to emphasize that it's not one or the other. You need both almost always. But how much time and effort and energy you dedicate to one or the other, retention has been gaining importance. And yes, this is because of COVID, where it's been harder to get new customers, but it's also about the crackdown on third-party cookies by the pie you can see over there. And that's because now it's a lot harder to chase people around the internet because they looked at one black dress and now you want them to buy another. So it's allowed more possibilities to focus on upsells, cross-sells, and resells to your existing customers that already know you, that know your product and trust in your business. And related to this, in the next trend, we will see that loyalty is on the rise. And this is something that I see with our customers, but also when I talk to friends in the industry, especially with a lot of e-commerce companies, they're really focusing on membership. How can we get our visitors that are anonymous on the website to create an account, to log in, and to really actively use our solution or service? Because if they're logged in, if I can nudge them to that loyalty card, I can make a lot of recommendations based on what they bought offline in a store potentially and bring that to the online world. And I can also have more information about them to provide a better service. And then, of course, it's time to talk about data. I believe that's the next slide. Yes. So when it comes to data, I always ask people to be mindful about the data that they have. And so there are a couple questions that you can ask yourself and your team within your company. So initially, what data do I have and where is it located? I don't mean which data center in which country, but really what are the tools where we have data and is it scattered? This allows you to get that first initial view of your data. And then you have to ask, okay, is this data clean? Do I use it? Is it maybe old? And do I need it? And when it comes to all this conversation, something I also hear a lot, especially when it comes to big companies, is what is my single source of truth? Especially if you have these like massive data science teams working together on the data that you have to, when you have multiple sources, that data will differ and you don't want clashes within your team. So you have to say, when data differs, this is what I will take as my single source of truth. So that's very important. And then, so this next question, why do I want to have this data, is more about, for example, when you have forms on your website and you're asking for certain fields from your customers, always be mindful of, okay, do I just ask this because everyone tends to, and that's what people do, or do I really need this data point? Now, I had an interesting case with a customer where they kept their form long on purpose because they wanted that friction, because if you went through the trouble of filling in that form, you were probably a very solid lead. And they only wanted the solid leads, not just anyone who can fill in like 2-3 fields. However, in most scenarios, you will want to avoid that friction and not collect as much data as possible, but just get an email address and maybe 2-3 things. And lastly, I want to also acknowledge that when we talk about data, we often talk about big data. Oh, we collected all the data. We have so much, we don't know what to do with it. But there are a lot of companies that don't have this data. So then what do? Then you have to turn more towards the qualitative side. So you might even say that you're kind of at a luxurious spot where you can still talk to your customers on a more one-on-one level, really look at your support tickets and what's coming up there. Start maybe having some small surveys. And if you have the customers that are invested in your product or service enough, start having some interviews that can be broadly about your company, but that can also be about a certain feature that you want to improve or publish in the next quarter, for example. You can also look at your personas, but I don't mean sitting in a meeting room and talking to your colleagues about, I think this is what our persona is. but actually looking at the surveys and the interviews. What are your customers telling you? Do some concept tests. That's another interesting thing, but actually this qualitative data thing can be a whole speech on its own. But one thing I want to mention is jobs to be done, JTBD. It's something that I'm currently reading about and I really love it. It's basically about not really thinking product first and hey, look at all my features like I just did, but really thinking, okay, who is my customer? What are they trying to get done? What are the friction points for them and how can I help them? But that only comes after. First, we have to really understand the customer. So if we have a bit more time in the end, we can talk about JTBD a bit more. But for now, I think it's time for some examples of experiences. So the first one we have is a company called CGS. They are a B2B company in the US with 5-6 different products without any overlap in terms of personas. So with a lot of B2B companies, at the top of the website, you'll usually have a menu that says services, products, or industries. And when you look at that dropdown, you often see very clear different personas. And in the case of CGS, this was so. They could identify people based on industry via firmographic data providers, or look at their behavior. So which product links did they click at? What was their initial landing page? Because if you were looking at a merchandising blog, we know clearly which product you're interested in. So in the next slide, we will see what they did with this information once they had their visitors in these audience groups. On the left side, you see their generic homepage, and it says applications, learning, and outsourcing company. That's a lot of things. The banner image you see is actually a video where you keep seeing different visuals of their products. Whereas on the right, they created, you see 3 examples, but there are actually more. The first one is about fashion, retail, merchandising, second about learning, and the last one about outsourcing. And already clearly from the start with the visuals, I can see that these are different products. And it tells me a bit more about how I came to the right place. And these people actually have a product related to me. The headlines, the CTAs, everything has been changed accordingly. And what's not visible in the screenshots is they also adjusted the white papers they recommend, which is a source of lead generation for them, to be relevant to the customer. If we know what your struggle is, then we can recommend the solution. So that's what they did. And in the second screenshot, you will see that they also have social proof in the form of logos. In the next slide, sorry. Yes, okay. So they also have social proof on their website, which is something I love when it comes to B2B. Like putting logos of the companies that you're already working with tells a lot to your potential leads. And again, on the right, you will notice, for example, for the retail example, they have General, Sportswear, and Tommy Copper, for example. And for learning and outsourcing, they have opted to highlight other logos. So this could be something you can do. Or in the next example, we have something similar, but slightly different approach, which I also quite like. And that is Classtag. Classtag is another company in the US. It's an ed tech solution. And they also segmented their audience based on personas, which are teacher, parent, school leader. What they did different compared to CGS was in terms of doing this based on IP address and behavior, they said, you know what, we're just going to ask our visitors. So then they added this unless component to ask people, are you a teacher, parent, or school leader, which we'll see in the next screenshot. And the nice thing about self-segmentation is if the question is relevant and if the visitor believes this will lead to a better experience for them, they tend to answer this. And the nice thing about it is they are no longer passively scrolling on your website, but they actually became activated and took action. They clicked something, and now they expect something to happen as a result, which we will see in the next slide. And this will look similar to the CGS example in that on the left, you have their generic homepage, more support for amazing teachers. That's great, but what if I'm a parent? So on the right side, we have the 3 examples for teachers, parents, and school leaders. Once again, all the copy and the texts have been adjusted to be relevant to whichever customer you're trying to serve in that moment, in that visit. And of course, the visuals make this very clear as well. From the start, I know as a visitor, I am in the right place. And then on to the next example. Yes, Prenatal. Prenatal is also, sorry, I'm trying to go fast because I have a lot of examples that I'm trying to get through. But Prenatal is a company in the Netherlands that sells baby clothes and toys and also maternity outfits and so on. The thing I like about Prenatal is having a child is quite an interesting journey, and it's a process where there's a lot that you don't know and that you need to learn in a limited amount of time. So a big part of their mission is to actually help their customers and provide guidance at every step of their journey. And when I say every step of their journey, they took this very literally. So Prenatal realized that depending on how far ahead you are in your pregnancy, so the different weeks, they know what you are interested in, they know what you need, they know what you want to look at, because of course they've been doing this a while. So if you tell them how far ahead you are, they have an email newsletter where they will provide all kinds of information and products and articles about the journey that you are on. I don't know if it gets better than that. But we also have a more simplistic example they have here in the next slide, and that's about asking questions to your customers to help them with their purchase. So in this case, getting a car seat for your baby is probably something you're going to do once in your life and never again, and you have no idea what you need to look at. And because of that, Prenatal came up with a quiz with like about 4 questions they ask. And it's also stuff like, do you want feature A or feature B? Maybe I have no idea what those features are because again, I'm new to this. And then they added these tiny question marks or little texts at the bottom that you can click. And then you find out more about feature A and B. You don't have to watch like tons of videos. You don't have to read tons of articles. Everything you need is in there. And 4 questions later, you get recommendations of products that fit your needs. And of course, the nice thing here is if I went into a store, there could be a salesperson that helps me and guides me through. On a website, this experience is often different, but they found a workaround for this. I had the same experience when I was looking for a vacuum cleaner, and apparently now they have like tons of new features that I have no idea about. But again, I found a quiz and I selected the things I want, and then I knew which product I should buy. So this is a neat example. And here they use that with a side box to promote the quiz. In the second slide, you will see that instead they adjusted the banner image. So instead of having the baby visual, they say, hey, do you need some help choosing this car seat? We have the answers for you. And then you can click and do the quiz. So moving on, we have an example from AS Watson, which is a larger group around the world. But this example is about Kruidvat, which is a drugstore chain in the Netherlands and Belgium. And it's really about getting creative, moving fast, and helping your customers where you can. And I mean this very literally, because this example is from the very beginning of COVID, when things shifted overnight. Stores were shut down, people were running out to get pasta and toilet paper, and things were quite a struggle. And especially if you're in retail, it was a night, let's say. And Kruidvat came up with a solution where they said, okay, we can ship things to people, but the postal office is really overwhelmed and packages will take a very long time to get to the people. And if you're trying to buy diapers for your baby, you need them as soon as possible, not in like a week or 2. So they completely rerouted their distribution system where a lot of the items you could order the way you used to, but they identified essentials that you could order directly from the wholesale distribution center. Now, of course, this on the ground is a massive operation, but also on the website, you need to have really clear messages of, hey, here are the items that you can get as quickly as possible. And you want to avoid frustration, because if I add an item that qualifies and another that doesn't, and I get to the cash register, I'm going to be annoyed if my package is not here in 3 days, but in a week. So then we had to really add stickers and notes all over the website, which we will see in the next slides. So they first started with a bar that says the post office is overwhelmed, but here you can still have free deliveries. Just expect that things will be a little different. I know it's all in Dutch, but it's just the top bar and the side box that I wanted to highlight. And in the next slide, we will see how they gave us a product feed of the items that could be shipped as quickly as possible. So then we added these tiny yellow stickers to each one of them saying, in 3 days, you can have it at home, which right now sounds like a long time, but at the beginning of COVID, that was actually very short. Like I could get my online groceries in 3 weeks, not 3 days. So yeah. And then moving along, I believe we'll have to skip the next 2 examples and get to key takeaways. Yes, for the sake of time. All right, so the first one is, of course, think customer first. That is the whole point of this session, this whole series, I know, but still sometimes we tend to slip. So always ask how you can make things easier for your customers. That goes back to jobs to be done. I'm currently reading the Jobs to be Done playbook. It's quite a nice one. I'm sure there are others out there. If you're just getting into it, I recommend some online articles and videos about this. But if you're interested in UX research, I definitely recommend this book. I'm about halfway, but the thing I like is they introduce concepts. And then if you're really interested in one, they tell you where you can go to dive deeper into that particular concept. Again, jobs to be done. I think it's a great part of being customer-centric in today's world. And then let your customers become your cheerleaders. This is something that I really believe strongly. It's if you're trying to help your customers and if you're trying to make them happy, over time, they will become your cheerleaders, both internally and externally. And this is definitely something we have been seeing at Unless. And honestly, when it comes to social proof, I can put all the happy customer quotes I want on our website. I can put all the fancy logos, but it will never be as powerful as an actual human being going to another one that they know and say, you know what, this product, they're doing something great. So again, make cheerleaders out of your customers. It's really worth the effort that you put in it. So again, retention over acquisition. And when it comes to data, just be mindful of the data that you collect. I think there was a bit of a hype around data where we were like, let's get in everything we can. We'll do so much with it. And now it's just scattered all over the place and it's kind of rusting a little bit. So reconsider how you're using it. What's your relationship to data? Why do you need it? What will you do with it? And the last point I'll make is a little tricky, probably for some businesses, but if you can, show your customers what you're doing with that data. And I don't mean an article that says, here's all the things we're doing with your data, but really like, if I ask you how many weeks you are with your pregnancy, I'm going to use that to help you. If I ask you if you need this shipped earlier, I'm going to try to do that for you. So really any data points should come back to them. If you're in B2B asking for someone's industry, you better provide industry related case studies and blogs or whatever it may be. All right, that was a really fast, speedy talk, but thank you for your time and attention. If you have any questions, I would love to hear them.
Amazing. A round of silent claps for you. Thanks so much for the presentation. Amazing to get a bit of a sneak peek into all the different examples and all the different ways that Unless have helped. So I saw that in the chat there was a question from David. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. First of all, he said, before I ask this, I have to say that this is superb. Unfortunately, Avid, we can't go on the entire day, but I agree, it would have been very nice. So the question is, what about UX for all the text over the images on that very first example? I'm not sure if text. I can go to that and potentially have a look. David,
the first one was CGS. Right. So this will be recorded and online, but CGS is a bit of an older company and they have a certain design choice that they have for their company. So there are certain things that we cannot change. But indeed, I also thought that the text over the visuals was a bit of a tricky choice, especially because it's a video. So even if you choose a certain color for the text, it might be problematic as the video rolls. I know since then they did update their website, but I'm not sure what it looks like at the moment. But I get your question.
Thank you for that. David, does that indeed answer your question? Was this also the one that you meant, indeed? The example?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah. It was just an accessibility thing, really.
Very valid. Yeah.
Thank you. Just going to open the floor. If there are any questions at this instance that people might want to ask, you can either pop them in the chat if you're not uncomfortable unmuting, but also more than welcome to ask your question directly. So I'm going to pause for a moment for people to have a think.
I have a question just in person, if that's okay.
Sure, of course.
I've also started reading just briefly on jobs to be done. I've watched a few Clayton Christensen videos on YouTube. So again, I found it really interesting. But the question that came to mind just as I was thinking here, so jobs to be done in my research so far, in my reading, like the jobs already exist, you know, like, so the question in my head is how useful, or maybe in that book, for example, does it touch on jobs that don't? So basically what I'm saying is it's about a company looking at how their product or how their offering or service can help a consumer complete the job that they want to do. But what I'm saying is, does it give any insight into jobs that don't currently exist? Do you know?
I think that's maybe. Let's see. So when it comes to jobs to be done, I think if the job doesn't exist, so you have a solution, but there is no problem, then you probably have to look at your fit in the market. Like, are you actually solving a problem? If the job is not there, I would be a little concerned. But with jobs to be done, so one of the ideas they have is filing taxes. I need to file my taxes. And the solution for this has changed over time. Before, it used to be like pen and paper. Then we started getting like these, I don't know, checkbook-like things. And then now there are tons of solutions online, apps where you can fill in your taxes. Yeah. So the method has changed, but the job has remained kind of the same over time.
Yeah.
And there are other methodologies than jobs to be done. The thing I like about this one is that it takes into account the main job, the side jobs that you might have to do, but also that we are social beings. So it's not just that I need to file my taxes, but there are emotional factors and financial and social. So it looks into those things too. Yeah. So say I'm a product owner at a company and I need to do X thing. I still have to go convince my stakeholders. So that's also a job, but it's more of a social job. Or maybe I need to prove myself internally, and that's an emotional job. So all the different things that you need to take into account. That's what I like about this version.
Did you read about are you familiar with the McDonald's milkshake example? No?
It's in the book, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Thank you so much, Ashim, for your question. I saw, sorry, Clara, were you going to, or someone unmuted? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I was going to go to the next question from Clara. So as you develop your platform, how much do you, as a voice of the customer in a voice of the customer company, get to define how the platform evolves? So that's a good one.
So I'll have to be honest, we are quite a small team. So I have been lucky that I get to be in all of those meeting rooms and they know that I am like the pretend customer, let's say, in the meetings. But we also like have certain approaches that in the past we have all done customer support. So if you were a customer, you could get a ticket answered by our CEO or our CTO or an intern. That could vary. Now we try to all do a bit of account management because we think that really like holds us on the ground. We know what customers want. So yes, I do a lot of this, but so does other people in the team. So in a way, we all try to be the voice of the customer as well. And yeah, I like product, so I get to be involved. But is that a challenge you're facing? You can share that if you like. Not to put you on the spot.
Clara, is there something that you wanted to respond to that? Or did it answer the question? Oh, you're not able to unmute, I see.
No worries.
Some challenge there. All good.
No, I made it. No, it's a great answer. Thanks a lot, because I was actually thinking, how do you distribute that intelligence? So so it's really nice that as a small group, you just do it by distributing, you know, this kind of collective intelligence approach. So thanks for that. Yeah.
In larger companies, I've also heard that they, like on Slack, they have a special channel dedicated to this. So any customer feedback that comes in, it gets shared there. If it's interesting or if it keeps coming up, then everyone on the team is also aware of it. So that's a tip I heard from some product owners.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone putting their questions in. We are already 1 minute over time. So Agnes's question, I'm going to ask you just to maybe answer it, and we will send it over in the email just to share it with the rest of the people here today. A big thanks to you for presenting and showcasing all the examples, and a round of applause. And also a big thank you to everyone joining in today. The very last thing that I will not do, because I see that it is disabled, then I genuinely hope everyone had a great time. It was lovely to see you all. Looking forward to potentially all of you joining in the next talk that we will be continuing into the new year. Wishing you a very good rest of the day, and speak soon.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.